This is Infinite Plane Society Deprogram. And I want to start off by going through comments. I think I meant to do that the other day, and I didn't quite get around to it. So if you leave comments on the videos, I will be responding. And when I do members-only videos, I will specifically address those separately. And there will be more of that to come. I'm working on a video right now on the Charlie Kirk thing, kind of a deep dive, putting together all of the predictive programming, because it seems like the people who look into it only look at snake eyes. But I'm putting it into the fullest context, which means instead of maybe it was the microphone that shot him, maybe it was a second shooter, maybe it was all these various stories, we're going right to the, no, he was squibbed. And it wasn't that he or TPUSA faked it. It's that the PSYOP entertainment complex faked it. So it's bigger than any of their conspiracy theories. They can't quite wrap their heads around it. But I'm seeing a growing body of content suggesting that either he's dead because he had to escape a real assassination attempt or something else. But none of them go so far because they can't without undermining the world stage itself. Because we're looking at this thing as analogous to the Butler, Pennsylvania event. You have to look at all these things as part of a continuous script. These aren't disparate, disconnected anomalies. No, this is a metascript. It is the secondary timeline superimposed over the real world to put us into a subjective hyper-reality, which they control. What's up, Paradoxymoronics? Duet Celis? But I'm making a lot of progress on the various departments of the IPS. Right now I have author copies of the handbook arriving, and I'm preparing a setup to start creating the promotional content for the book. The handbook for the recently deprogrammed, which represents about 7 years of discourse and thought and debate as we fine-tune our method for assessing media. So that's the main thing, the intellectual groundwork for a third branch of media. If you want to call it a branch, I mean, we might as well. But it's a duopoly, and then there's us. And what we represent is a perspective that has never been platformed in the establishment-controlled main and alternative media ecosystems. And people will see the value in this. I'm pretty sure of it, because we've all been so inundated with fakery and engagement bait that it's not even reasonable to try to keep up with the headlines and respond as they're created, because we're too inundated with fake stuff. So people are overreacting by default. So this represents an alternative to overreacting or reacting at all. By the time I feel like there's enough facts to make an informed judgment on something, there's no reactivity left. Like it doesn't even get a rise. And it's kind of interesting how you see people peak on an issue, they have to move on to something else. And they burned out the whole Epstein thing. They burned out Minneapolis. They burned out Jim Carrey. I'm not sure what's next, but I am monitoring trends. And one of the continuing trends that I am seeing is the demon stuff. So the New York Post, AI is ushering in a new era of Satanism. Exorcists warn, a great power. And I found a new word today that has to do with this. I think they're called demonectomies, which is when they remove a demon. While participants aren't granted the authority to conduct a demonectomy, the license can be bestowed upon a bishop per Catholic canon law. The university promises on its website to deepen your knowledge of the ministry of exorcism and deliverance prayer in a serious and interdisciplinary way. So this year, there's a special emphasis on AI's use among Satanists. I don't know. This is from the New York Post, and the article is about these priests who are warning religious leaders that you're going to need more of this. Anyway, this is a Mexican priest. His name is Father Almanza, and he's inviting imams, rabbis, evangelicals to join in this course. So he teaches a course. He says, artificial intelligence is great power, a force for good and evil. What they're doing, and this is what the media does, this is what Tucker Carlson does, is they're tapping into the gullibility of their audience. And the religious demographics are specifically vulnerable because they're selectively gullible for their chosen priesthood. I don't know what these exorcists cost or what the course costs. I mean, it's not that I disbelieve in exorcisms, but I think this is largely a scam, like spiritualism, knocking on the tables and seances. That stuff's all, in my view, it's very scammy, and it should be beneath the dignity of the church to try to sell this and then combine it with this popular, ignorant dread of AI. But here we are. And as I said before, the movie screen or the black mirror in your palm represents the Overton window. And they widened the window, they opened it a little more to let aliens in, and somehow demons got in. So now we live in a world full of demons because it's now an acceptable superstition. So you could technically call it a hyperstition. What's up, Howard Boyd? Deprogrammed Truther, Kenley. Phones are open, 505-510-4226. We'll be transitioning to an 800 number soon. The new phone device will be in within the next couple of days, and we'll be mobile, taking phones anytime, anywhere. The open phones thing has always been a significant part of Infinite Plane Radio, especially when we had boots on the ground, press passes, checking out all the empty hospitals, looking in and seeing a bunch of dancing nurses. Does anybody here miss 2020? It was such a big revelation. It's like you didn't know how mind controlled everybody is and how reachable everyone is. There's no escaping it. We live in an inescapable Truman Show-like enclosure. And what I realized too is that we talk about the elite like it's some small group at the top of the pyramid. But when it comes down to it, the elite represents anybody who is acting as extensions of their power. So all the snitches, the mask Karens, these would all be considered the elite. So they're everywhere. Yesterday we talked a bit about some John Carpenter movies, and I'm adding him to the list of metascriptors. So on that project where we're breaking down 63 to 26, all the fakery, I'm doing a separate one now, specifically on the metascriptors, their works, and the psyops they reinforced. And John Carpenter has got They Live and In the Mouth of Madness, which both say a lot about the world stage. Big reveals. And then a more recent movie called Free Guy happens to borrow quite a lot from John Carpenter's They Live, but in a different context. NPCs waking up. But I'm finding, and this is very interesting, is that there's quite a lot of Hollywood movies out there, popular films, that have a pretty blatant Gnostic subtext. And like, what is that about? We live in this system, which is a analogous system to the demiurge's prison itself. And what we constitute here is something of a media Gnosticism, separating knowledge from belief to break out of a false worldview. It's just really strange that they would essentially give away the game, show the exit. Like, I'm not exactly sure what it means, but I don't think it's coincidental. What's up, Penguinati 4128? Says Chop was awesome too. Oh yeah, Chazistan. I thought Chazistan was going to be contagious. Like I was expecting it was going to be everywhere, like Occupy Wall Street with like a scent of burning flesh. I think they were getting into cannibalism. The thing with the garden was my favorite. They had a garden, and then they decided to make it segregated, so it was non-whites. It was only for indigenous, blacks, people of color, BIPOC. And then they decided to take the fence down because they said it was speciesist. And if a goat or a cow wants to walk through the garden, it should have the right to do so. So fences are speciesist. And they took the fence down. So now you just have this open garden that anybody could plant in so they could survive the winter in Chazistan. And then some Chazistanian with like a staff started practicing his kung fu moves, and he killed all the crops. So they wouldn't have survived, and we speculated they would get into cannibalism. Leper Eunuch Paver says, we need another pandemic. As a homeless dude get hassled by the cops way less and set up tents in more places. Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Because I remember when it started, people were walking around saying, where's all the homeless people? And they believed that there was some kind of a covert genocide happening. It's like, no, they all got moved into shelters. Do you remember what they did? How they dumped sand in the skate parks? And everybody got the COVID-19, meaning that you gained the 19 pounds from sitting around watching Netflix. Just deepening the programming. What's up, Tuna X, Zinvalis? All right, we've got, it's a little later than usual. And our numbers will go up. By the way, we're now on Kick. We're on Kick, X, and YouTube. And we are going to expand because we want to reach more people and get calls. And people will call when the numbers go up. I know how this works. And when we start getting into the routine of back-to-back callers, and one of the ways I used to get calls consistently is I would use Twitter and actually have the YouTube stream title as a question, whatever it is we're going to talk about. Like, are aliens indeed demons? In fact, let me get to the questions or the comments. Okay, so it was RDB said, is there a difference between aliens and demons? So most of us here are pretty familiar with the whole Babylon working concept. Jack Parsons representing the OTO, like Mystery Babylon. You had L. Ron Hubbard for science fiction, and Marjorie Cameron, movie star, the priestess, the Scarlet Woman. So that trio performed some rite to incarnate the Antichrist spirit into the then gestating Donald J. Trump. At least that's the lore. Well, Marjorie Cameron is the first person to report sighting a UFO. This was a year before Roswell. This is 1946. And it's been correlated with their ritual, that they were drawing this spirit from the abyss, and the abyss being space. Duets Celeste says, please consider giving the stream a like. Yeah, and if you don't like it, give it a thumbs down, because the algorithm doesn't care. It just wants engagement. Positive or negative, doesn't matter. Leper says, during pandemic, some people went to the nicer areas that were usually off limits for camping. I'd feel better about it if it was a monthly stimmy check, not just, once a year? I mean, seriously, like, monthly. We got to wear the costume. We got to act. We got to play the roles. We deserve compensation. We're part of the GAGs, the Government Actors Guild. The Dancing Nurses was and is one of my favorite things about it, but it's also one of the more glaringly obvious indicators that the whole thing was just hype. And I don't think these dancers were hired, but to be specifically doing that. I think what happened is they just had a bunch of personnel with nothing to do, which was quite a contrast from what was being reported. And that's what got us started with the press passes. We said, why should we be forced to stay home when the media can go around? Are we not media? Like, are we media? Are you a reporter? If you go somewhere and you call into a live stream, which is a pool of researchers and bloggers. And I think we could argue that, yes, we are indeed media. So we set up press passes, which made it legitimate for you to leave your house. Sadly, though, the next lockdowns, to the best of my understanding, by looking at the predictive programming, it's going to be Fallout. And I don't think you can go out during Fallout, no matter what your press pass says, no matter how, quote, essential you are, because the danger is far worse. It's not just about some contagious disease or virus, but you're talking about a toxic environment. And that's one of the ways they can make it affect everybody. Because when they actually do it, like this high altitude detonation, yeah, they'll black out some parts of the country, Seattle, but they will use the winds, the fallout projections, to promote lockdowns ubiquitously. And one of the common things that we've seen here, and I've seen regular truthers noticing, is that we've been hit with a ton of EMP, fallout, and nuke propaganda for the last few years. Like, we've been soaked with it. Just like previous to that, it was all getting us prepped for the lockdowns and the pandemic. Penguinotti says, I have one of the first press passes. Awesome. Well, I plan to update those very soon. And we will be reactivating the IPR Press Club in tandem with the relaunch of the tabloid. Everything's coming into fruition. This is a juggernaut. It's a machine with many parts. But thanks to AI, it's all possible. Like, a lot of things that weren't really feasible just a year ago are now absolutely doable. It's one of the reasons why the imagery that we use contains the cyborg penguin, because we're augmenting everything we're doing with the latest tech so that we can remain competitive. Because we're doing this without relying on mainstream or alt media approval. We don't want to breathe their air. We don't want to curry favor with controlled opposition, shills, and plants. Because they're operating from an old paradigm, an outmoded operating system. They exist in an establishment-controlled ecosystem, and they're so attached to this, addicted to this constant stream of engagement bait and the competition for clicks, that they've lost sight of their original intent when they left mainstream media, which was finding the truth. None of them give a damn about truth anymore. They're all content thieves and attention seekers. They've lost the plot. They've been conscripted into the bread and circuses. They never left the tent, and now they're just enjoying the clown show so much they forgot that they were supposed to expose the fact that there was some kind of mass deception going on. But now they're part of it. Now they're mass deceivers. And that's really because of a low standard of evidence and a lack of a methodology. So what I mean by that is, when we process media, we process it in a fundamentally different way. I would describe it as the auto-believer, auto-hoaxer dichotomy here, where it's real unless they tell us it's fake, versus fake until proven real. And we've been using fake until proven real for years. And now we're fully vindicated. People used to question it. They say we went too far. Like, you shouldn't be so skeptical of media, guys. And now they're like, okay, you've been making sense this whole time. And the truthers and conspiracy theorists never let go of the automatic belief. They just jumped from one side, one compartment, to another compartment. They never left Plato's cave. They never changed from belief systems to operating system, from passive consumption of media to active parsing of the facts and media deconstruction, which is why they never arrived at the correct answers when it comes to predictive programming, and more recently concurrent programming, which is one of our terms, which they attribute to either the simulation or just coincidence. So they've never arrived at the right answers. And again, we've been pointing out the right answers for some time. And the bitter clingers to Trutherville guardrails, these orthodoxies, as I call them, they're going to be looking very foolish as the third branch of media expands and we do more work to destroy these various guardrails. So if you're making your living off of some red pill, half-baked conspiracy theory, you're going to be phased out. Sort of like the Mandela effect. How many people are making money off the Mandela effect? All right, let me go to my comments section. Jamarin May says, why is Oprah Winfrey aging in reverse? I haven't seen, but you can't say it's adrenochrome because there are too many examples of people not looking better after years of using it. Kenley says, I will not comply. I did not once, will not wear their ritualistic shame muzzle. Hey, we coined the term face diaper, and it got picked up by InfoWars. We also coined COVID 1984 and Mask of the Beast. I suggested that maybe there's a typo in the Bible. People were on the lookout for Mark of the Beast, looking at the pokey very suspiciously, when all the while it was the mask. It makes no difference if you're talking about a symbolic gesture that shows that you're in complete allegiance with the beast system and you're an NPC. And everybody made it very clear. So if you didn't know, everybody that you know practically have essentially sworn allegiance to the demiurge, to the beast matrix, with very few exceptions. And you couldn't escape it. I thought I was safe. Have you read the Richard Matheson's I Am Legend? I haven't watched the Will Smith one because I think it really missed the point. The fact he had a dog bothered me because the whole thing was supposed to be about solitude and isolation. But anyway, in I Am Legend in the book, it's a vampire bat virus that shuts down the world. And the last man on Earth has a fortress. He's basically trying to wage war against the vampire world, where every day he goes out hunting them, impaling them, throwing them into this ditch, and then covering them with gasoline and lighting them on fire, then going home, drinking, listening to classical music while rebuilding his fortress, which the vampires are always trying to tear down. And at some point, a female bangs on his door, and he thinks she might be a human. He's not sure. And he essentially lets her in. He lets her in, and guess what? She was a vampire. So he learns from her that to the vampires, the reason why it's called I Am Legend is that he is a legend because the vampires live in fear of the remaining human. So it's kind of an inversion of how you have the story of Dracula as a legend. But now this last human is the legend. So I Am Legend is basically about man's last stand against the vampires. And at the end, he's supposed to be humiliated and publicly executed by the vamps. But the girl actually slips him some pills so he doesn't have to face that humiliation. My point of it is, I wouldn't have had to have gone through the whole face diaper ordeal, but I had compromised my fortress. I was quarantined with someone who fell for the entire psyop. And so I remember I was like, how did I get myself into this? I'm basically locked in the room in a house with someone who thinks you have to wipe down the groceries with alcohol and wear a mask indoors. It ruined everything. It ruined everything. Jamarin May says, I have a theory on NPCs. Perhaps they've been reincarnated so many times they forgot their essence in this construct. Perhaps those that are more awake are newer and have had less reincarnation cycles. Kind of the opposite of how people normally describe it. Like, okay, so if the population has consistently grown, like exponentially expanded, let's say we have 8 billion people, right? That means that there are more souls. And that makes sense if you look at the Gnostic model, which suggests that there's this material realm and its creator cannot create life. I mean, it can animate, it can create the foundations, the structures, but it needs the soul essence, which it can only get from the monad, the real God. Which is not a personal God, it's not a human God, but it's this source of all life. So essentially, you have the source, and then you have this regional architect who made this realm. And in order to power this realm, he has to take these soul sparks, he needs to steal the light and imprison it. So what it looks like to me is that the newer populations would just be those who have been more recently kidnapped and forcibly incarnated into the matrix. So I would look at it as the expanding population isn't necessarily of NPCs, but of newbies who are brand new. I don't know if it means the same thing as soulless. I think there's a level of self-awareness they may lack, where those of us who maybe have been here a few cycles are a bit jaded and aware of it. It's all about cycles and reincarnation, which we know, I was mentioning these movies, these metascripters who create these Gnostic stories. You can add Christopher Nolan into that with Westworld. Very, very much along the same lines, where they're able to wake up and escape the cycles when they start to comprehend the continuity. They start to recognize that they have a past going back many days. They have to break out of the 24-hour cycle. Similarly, to break out of this, I think you have to look at life outside of the context of your present meat suit and consider the continuity of consciousness before and after. And that's the awareness that is supposed to lead to liberation in the Gnostic paradigm. But anyway, to explain the additional population, I have to assume that these are just recently conscripted souls, not empty vessels, which it could be, but that's a horrifying proposition. Like, imagine 500,000 souls and 8 billion people. All right, thank you very much. We have a new arrival here with a bucket of wrenches and shields. Henrik has brought 20. McDirtyworks, Sync Lloyd, Chris Johnstone, Tau Live Vision, Bach Precision, Rocco Calzone, Rodius, Chris Diamond, Rome 1, Splatter, Vix, Truth Detective, Chad, It's Snoopy, We, K Swan, Senior Clumpo, Peace and Wealth Seeker, Jenna Lovecraft Reeves, Bro Sanchez Official, Haley have all received the Blue Wrench and Blue Shield of the IPS. Jamarian says, the more times you've been through the system, the more it wears you down and you forget who you are. See, that's possible too. Like you have an original tape, an original recording, and then you play it, you record it, and you get this loss of quality. And maybe the souls do have wear and tear. The souls age, dissipate, your light goes out. So all the people who are just like born NPCs are just burnouts from some hard lives. That could well be. Because the whole purpose of this thing, it's a war of attrition, where day by day, they disabuse you of your connection to higher consciousness. They get you to identify with the body, with its pains and its drives and its needs. And then on top of that, you have this culture of narcissism, which tries to isolate you in your ego and your image. which to me is the definition of what this realm is. It's all about the image, the surface, and a denial of the inner spark. And I think if you live like that, you live at the level of beast with no free will. You don't exercise agency. You're just a leaf blowing in the wind. If you live like that, I think you do get recycled by default. And I imagine that the ignorance, the being cut off from that source, maybe it gets worse with every subsequent reincarnation. But I'm still thinking about the increase in numbers. Like, what does that mean? Hollow vessels? But there's also this notion, which I agree with, but I add on to it, that you can divide the population into these three groups. This was, again, an older concept, that the majority who are just going with the program, what we call NPCs today, they called helix. They're never going to wake up. They have fully immersed themselves in illusion. And so those would be the NPCs. Then you have the ones who are on the fence, who sometimes wake up, but they're easily swayed by the world. So it's always a inner war with them. And that'd be the psychics. And then you have the pneumatics, which are the ones who exist at a level of awareness that they don't fully identify with the meat suit and have the longer term perspective. And they're not subject to being reincarnated because they've already transcended to some extent. And I had the fourth category. The fourth category is, I think that for everyone that is somewhat transcendent and off the grid spiritually, I think there are just as many people who are of the realm, souls of pure darkness, who are here to negate the light. I'm talking like, interspecies predators, murderers, serial killers, narcissists, control freaks, those types of people. I think a lot of them are here as antagonists, that there's no hope of them ascending because they don't come from anywhere higher. They were never anything but products of the matrix, powered by something else. I don't have a name for them, but I should come up with one, because I do think there's this, and I have a very Manichaean concept here that I tend to agree with. I do think that this is not simply a carnival, but I think it's more of a, like we talk about psychological warfare. We can all agree that world government is waging psi war on you. You are a target demographic for one form of propaganda or another to triangulate you against the other half of the population so they can keep you in a sublimated civil war for your entire life. So they're waging war on your mind. What makes you think that there wouldn't be an analogous war on the soul? The suppression of consciousness, ignorance, darkness over light. And I think that there is a situation here where it's always this eternal battle between light and dark. And I'm not a religious person. I was more atheist when I came to this. And I only arrived at this because of direct experience. So I really would say that I'm not a believer in any particular faith or religion, but instead I'm more Gnostic about it. And this is more of a theoretical model. And as such, I'm still trying to figure out how it all works. I'm just saying, based on my own experience, I do get the idea that this is not only not neutral, but that there's a active attempt to subvert light and turn the balance in that direction, sway all the psychics to the dark side, keep the NPCs mired in the mud, in the black goo. And I think the dark side is winning. I think the population going up might even be an indicator of that. Like, it's bringing in more matrix batteries and there's nothing we can do. And most of them are going to be overpowered, because look what we're moving into, where not only do you have the physical prison for the soul, but now they've got an effective prison for the mind. I mean, this is multi-leveled. The number on the screen is active, 505-510-4226. Again, it's 505-510-4226. It is 100% active. It is receiving calls. Jamarin May says, perhaps the game needs villains to make it more believable. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Look, here's what I'm going off of. The subtext, the symbolism, the archetypes that we see throughout the entertainment, throughout the various psyops that we talk about, but the subtext in the entertainment, we see a lot of consistent symbolism. And we keep seeing these contemporary myths, these movies, reinforcing the idea of a material world that's illusory, that's a prison, and the way to break out is to recognize the cycle. But it always has the same archetypes. You've got the Saturnian presence. You got Christoph controlling the fake matrix. You got the programmers in Westworld and the man in black who keeps killing the synths every day, and they don't remember. So they come back the next day, and until they start remembering that they're stuck in a cycle, they're not able to escape. But when they do, there's this big rebellion and they burn down Westworld. So they escape. But this is like a reoccurring theme. I was talking about a couple John Carpenters or Free Guy, but there's a growing list. And I'm looking at this thinking, what is this? Why is this such a prevalent theme? And why is it embedded in so many movies? Part of it is that it's esoteric. And I imagine that many of the people who are watching these movies, consuming this entertainment, they just don't know. It goes over their heads. So it has this element of being exoteric and esoteric. So it could just be the confidence and arrogance of the programmers knowing that they can hide truth in plain sight and we won't perceive it. But anyway, I still don't quite know. If somebody wants to try to call in, it works for some people. It's not working for the person who's trying to call in, but I'm convinced that it's not a problem on my end. Mazelle says, I imagine most of us here aren't from here, but also feel misunderstood. Well, it sounds very black pill to say prison planet. It sounds very much like, kind of pessimistic. And that's where I kind of diverge from Christian Gnostics. Like, I don't have enough information to know. Like, a lot of people who discuss these things say, don't reincarnate, don't come back. And like, I'm not convinced that I didn't choose this. I'm not quite sure. I don't have all the answers. But I do know that there seems to be some systemic deception and fakery built into it, and built-in safeguards against people noticing. And the system has this immune system that automatically rejects, punishes, marginalizes, and ostracizes those who go against the establishment. And it's encoded into all of the myths. So they demonize the free thinker. They demonize anyone challenging authority. And they seem to maintain, by design, a power disparity rooted in weaponized ignorance. So you have the informed elite, the illuminated, and then the rest are in darkness. And there are these grievous punishments set aside for those who would, steal the light of the gods, share the knowledge. Everything's very gate kept. We live in a security clearance society. And the model itself, which is what I'm working on describing, is 100% compartmentalized. It's in these mutually exclusive categories. The number again is 505-510-4226. If you want to try calling in. Somebody else call in, because that person who's trying to call claims that they're doing that it's not working, but they said so last time and someone else still called. So I don't want to spend too much time on tech support. I'm going to assume it's working fine and the problem is on your end. Let's see. EvN777 said, I really enjoy when you touch on religion, God, spirituality. It seems you stick to one main topic most of the time. It's nice to hear you attain other knowledge. Yeah, we talk about psyops, and I find it increasingly difficult to not notice that there's an analogy here between exiting the internalized Truman Show and the older concepts which are part of the Gnostic myths or the Gnostic constructs. And I've been using the term media Gnostic because one of the fundamental distinctions that I've made for a long time here is that what we're primarily looking at here is the difference between knowers and believers. And believers are represented as both mainstream and alternative, that they're both believers. And they use belief systems, which are dependent systems that are passively absorbed and accepted as true at face value. So there's an element of trust or faith built into it. And this pertains to mainstream and alt. So what we have done is we've reframed the way we examine media. Our frame of reference includes systemic fakery, going back decades, fake history, bent history, media fakery, special effects, psyops, fake people, the whole thing, the programming and entertainment. So we have this wider body of information, this body of knowledge to look at when we examine what's happening on the screen. And this leaves us in a position of not believing a lot of the stuff, but not because we just don't want to believe it, but rather because there's not enough information to support it. And the information we do get contradicts it or casts significant doubt. So it leaves us not as just agnostic, but more as informed non-believers. Jamarian says, I recall the scene from Vanilla Sky where the Cruz character was screaming for tech support once he realized he was inside of a simulated reality. Yeah, that movie is so loaded with symbolism. Vanilla Sky, so we talk about predictive programming. And yeah, sure, that one has some 9/11 stuff, some COVID stuff even. But besides that, that movie has a great deal of esoteric symbolism encoded into it. You know, David Ames, 33, dies 3 days later, comes back and wakes up in a simulation after his funeral and the 3-day wake. He's brought back to life by Sophia. And if you know the Gnostic myth, you know, Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, and he's essentially this Gnostic Christ. And of course, even the actors, Penelope Cruz, Tom Cruise, their names, it's all very significant here. But his magazine is called Rise, and he's battling against what he calls the seven dwarfs. So if you break down the components, it's really about this person who's reincarnating again, but he has to resurrect. And the resurrection is here correlated with this concept of Kundalini, you know, rise, the fire serpent, the elevation of consciousness. And he is calling for tech support, and they start playing that Beach Boys song, Good Vibrations, as he goes up the tower, and then they break it all down for him. And at the end, he jumps off the building, and then it focuses on an eye. You also have the woman in red. And I did a breakdown of the red witches. I'll have to put this in our Metascript symbolism section. The red witch, the scarlet witch, scarlet woman. It's another reoccurring theme, but it was also prevalent here. Now, again, this might be a bad movie. I'm just saying it's loaded with symbolism. And there's a lot of concepts in there that are encoded in the music, in the lyrics. Like he's getting his face fixed. he's going into surgery. He's really high, and he's singing, "What if God was one of us, a slug like one of us?" And that expresses the idea of the forgetful soul incarnated into the matter, into the material realm, and then trying to find its way home, trying to reawaken or ascend. But the whole movie is about ascension, the magazine, Rise, and there's other elements to it as well. The original title of Vanilla Sky, the book, is Open Your Eyes. And I found some interesting threads connecting Eyes Wide Shut to Vanilla Sky that I think are worth exploring, but it's another topic. You know, Tom Cruise as an actor is consistently representing the archetype of the sun god or the hero, like Horus, and he's consistently associated with the number 33 and the theme of resurrection, the obelisk stuff, the top of the building, also the falling man. He's always showing himself falling or hanging. And I think the falling in Vanilla Sky in particular has some great significance to the idea of descent into matter, of incarnation. It's also notable, too, that he's the Jesus of Scientology. And Scientology is, I think, a science fictionized version of the, I don't know if I'd call it Gnostic, but in many ways, I mean, it's kind of like a science fiction version in some ways of Catholicism. Can I get a second opinion? Will somebody call 505-510-4226? I'm not going to press the matter. I'm not going to do tech support live. If it doesn't ring, I'm going to assume it's probably on my end. But again, it's receiving calls. It's been receiving calls all day. There's no message here. There's no warning. There's no buffering. It's receiving calls. So call in if you like. Mike Archangel says, gratitude. Thanks to Tim and the gifters of memberships. Tracy Downey says, it's been confirmed it was not Jim Carrey. It was a masked impersonator. No, that was a troll. Captain F-Tard says, your ISS is a weather balloon. If there's a light in the sky that's moving, it's probably not a balloon because weather balloons don't move that fast. Weather balloons, though, there are stratospheric balloons that can stay up for 6 months or even a year that could, in fact, I mean, the Loon X. Right before SpaceX, it was Loon X. It's like Loon X was the thing. It could reach everybody anywhere, but they're using satelloons that fly above the atmosphere and they're relatively stable. And then they said it wasn't economically viable. And now suddenly it's SpaceX. So sometimes I wonder if SpaceX didn't just buy Loon X and change the story. So instead of, look, somebody call and hang up. You don't even have to talk. We just want to test the phone. Jamarian says, the old Twilight episodes are loaded with deeper symbolism. I recall the After Hours. A mannequin becomes a real woman and forgets she was actually a mannequin. Well, Twilight Zone has that episode with the aliens. I think they're eating people. Like, I think they've had some pretty dark themes. I guess there's a consensus that the phone's not working. That's really weird. You know, I've been using the same phone number for years. Okay, it is working. Someone's calling. Hey, thank you for calling and helping us test the system. Okay, so it works. Whoever just pranked us, appreciate it. So I've been thinking too about Hell 9000. evil AI. And you got Skynet, James Cameron, Terminator, Skynet. And even that gets into, of course, the Terminator itself, which is a robot with, some kind of sentience. And then recently we had Frankenstein making the rounds, which is a similar kind of concept, more of an organic cyborg. Hey, what's up, caller? Thank you for helping us test the system. Okay, maybe there's something wrong. Yeah, To Serve Man, that was the episode. One of the recurring themes with alien invasions, too, has been that they come down here to intercept our use of nukes, to stop us from using weapons of mass destruction. Like maybe they're going to come down here to stop us from using AI irresponsibly. But ever since Steven Spielberg announced this new movie, the public has just been extremely suggestible and ready to experience the alien invasion. Those on the right are ready to fight the demons. Those on the left are ready to embrace them and ask for advanced tech. Again, aliens are angels with a little bit of science fiction on top. That's all they are. It's science fiction angels. These are angels for the atheists because they need us to be superstitious to control us, to have us exist in a hyper reality and to have us be easy to manipulate. They need us to be superstitious and gullible. So those who are believers in the materialistic, reductionist, science fiction dominant paradigm of the day, they're just as superstitious as the religious people. But their superstitions have the trappings of science fiction, which makes it science-y, so people think it's a valid belief. We'll have the phones fixed by tomorrow. Oh, Kenley says it works. I got a recording the first time, didn't mean to hang up on you. Okay, maybe it's something in my settings. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to just do a quick look. No, I don't see any issues here. It's not screening any calls. But regardless, I'll have it fixed by tomorrow. This isn't the main phone system. We're actually moving to a better system with a better speaker. It's a secondary phone. And I'm likely going to use an 800 number. So if you call in and someone else is still on the phone, you'll be able to listen and then jump right in. But yeah, thanks for letting me know it works. It has a pulse. Gremlins, CIA. I mean, take your pick. Somebody's messing with us. That doesn't sound that paranoid like it used to. Yeah, maybe I blocked his number. No, I do have a lot of numbers blocked. It's actually ridiculous. And you don't want to see the IPS think tank dungeon, how many accounts are in there. People would manufacture 10, 15, 20 troll accounts, and the names would contain the message so you could ban them, but they would get the message out. I mean, we were kind of weaponizing troll tech at that time as well. The reason for the wrenches and for everyone becoming a mod was so that we could ward off the constant influx of trolls and have a reasonable, calm conversation. The think tank was only made possible because of the wrench and those willing to wield the wrench. And so many trolls are just cry bullies. I mean, they act so tough. They act like they're running the show, and then you ban them and they whine about it and beg to be let out of their little cell. So I get over it. So we talked about the demonectomies. Again, I'm just noting the trend. The trend here. I got a quote here from Frank Herbert, Dune Messiah. They are not mad. They're trained to believe, not to know. Belief can be manipulated. Only knowledge is dangerous. And that's perfect. That is encapsulating what I'm describing here. That the mainstream news consumers are trained to be believers, which is fundamentally qualitatively different than knowers. And it's because it makes them controllable. Their belief can be manipulated. What's up, Sprightly Sprite? Thanks for joining. We're working on getting the phone systems working, but apparently something's going on. It doesn't surprise me, but we're going to work out the bugs, because once we get the phone systems going, and you'll see, it tends to bring in a lot of new people, especially when other content creators call. We get a lot of cross marketing, which is a good thing. And it's exactly what we want right now, because what we're doing here is we are creating a separate branch of media that has an updated operating system, functioning bullshit detectors, and an actual understanding of the purpose of government controlled entertainment and media, and why they do psyops on a routine basis. Lean Dion says Joe Rogan's latest episode is about ancient aliens, fallen angels that mated with humans back in the day. See, Rogan is a pretty good indicator of what's being fed to the masses. He's been used in predictive programming, concurrent programming. He's definitely a player. He's part of the psyop entertainment complex. I have a video from September 10th, which was America Comeback Tour with Charlie, but it was also the comeback of Charlie Sheen. So Charlie Sheen's on Joe Rogan, and they're talking about JFK getting shot by Oswald and the advent of the term conspiracy theorist, and how at one time that he could recall, Charlie Sheen was in a theater and somebody threw something at him, a projectile, and it hit him on the head. And Joe Rogan laughs, and he's got like an arrowhead on his shirt, and he's like, that was a really nice shot. And I thought, okay, that's really weird. And the next scene, hey, Charlie, they just killed Charlie Kirk. They just segued into that. Jamarian May says, Tim, have you ever ruminated about your influence on the construct and the ripple effects you've had? Perhaps you've created new timelines of other people's reality conception and their own timeline. I think there's only one timeline. I think the idea of there being multiples is only in the sense that, like fifth dimension, like there are multiple possibilities, but only one comes through. We don't each get our own subjective universe and timeline. Mandela effects are totally fake. But we all draw from the same source. We're all condensing from the same source, the realm of possibilities, where, yeah, there are obviously anything, not necessarily anything, but as far as multiple possibilities coexisting, but in a hypothetical state. Hypothetical. When it condenses down to matter, it's just one timeline. And this is the one that we're describing, the real world, which they converge with their fake events, putting us into a mental simulation. Kenley says, who's the guy you stream with weekly? I love those collabs. Oh, Fakeologist. Yeah, Fakeologist and I on Tuesdays. And we keep those ones concise, like an hour breakdown. You know what we might do? And we've been doing this for years, is we do a 311 anniversary. We're getting very close to it. We should do a 311 anniversary. I wonder if John LeBon, because he's usually the one that sets those up. I wonder if he'd be into it. You know, we have fundamental disagreements all the time, and it doesn't matter. We have enough commonalities here that we exist in the same real world. But what we're doing here is we're aiming for a level of purity, because we want to scale up. We don't want to be 80% pure, 20% agitprop, and then scale up and have a larger group of misinformed people bringing in their faulty logic. So we really have to be kind of hard-lined about certain things, like no mercy, no exceptions, objectivism, no MSM plus, no anti-positions, no pro-positions, no political positions. When it comes to spirituality, religion, I don't care. That's not my prerogative. My focus here is on the mainstream media, world state, church. That's the religion I'm focused on. Kenley says an hour is too quick. Yeah, you know what? The hour kind of constrains us quite a bit, I've noticed, but it works for him. And I think it kind of forces us to not have any dead air and to make sure that we're, I guess, bringing a lot to the table. I mean, just to make the most of it. But when I get back into my office space and the regular setup where I have OBS and I can do audio, video feeds, etc., when we get to that, I'm sure we'll have a lot more extensive conversations, and also more guests and more cross-marketing with other content creators. I specifically want to send copies of my book, the Handbook for the Recently Deprogrammed, to other content creators for them to review. I want to do my book promotion this year, and I've got a few cities where I think I could promote it. It's going to happen after I create a series of whiteboards, because I'm trying to describe an invisible prison. I'm trying to describe this compartmentalized world stage construct that we all take for granted, because if you're not aware of it, by default, you're in it. So everybody's programmed unless you consciously deprogram. It can't happen by accident. And it has these built-in presuppositions and an assumed basis in objective reality. Like, they're the arbiters of truth. When we can demonstrate psyop after psyop, systemic fakery, news bending, prefabricated historic events, and when you look at it in its totality, even just looking at the range we're looking at, we're only going 63 to 2026. And you look at this 63-year period, there's no way you can ignore the influence of systemic fakery on that scale. And what it tells us is that the real world has been augmented with a simulated version of it that has a lot of things that didn't happen, conditions that don't actually exist, people who don't really exist, and a lot of stuff that just doesn't really matter. But the reason for it is to maintain as Walter Lippmann wrote, a sublimated civil war, the mind war, as we call it. And the mind war never ends. It's never reconciled, because it's the product of constantly reinforced polarities and triangulation between the two main factions. And the triangulation is what keeps the two sides at war with each other. Meanwhile, the triangulator, who would be Big Brother, remains above the fray. It's a brilliant system. I mean, look, it's got billions of minds contained. Jamarin says, Tim, there might only be one manifest reality, but there's many possibilities to choose from. Assuming you have agency. I mean, there are some people who would say that we're just animals with no agency, no free will, and life means nothing. There are people who are comfortable with that. I listen to a lot of atheist podcasts because I I find a lot of their arguments useful, their research useful. Like, there are things I like to know. I'm studying the Bible, and I find it fascinating that the accounts aren't really firsthand because they came 40 years after the event. And I'm just looking at how these things are constructed. But these people who are very anti-religion or atheistic tend to then say that it's all ridiculous because we're just animals. We have no free will, no destination, that the universe means nothing. And they're comfortable with it. Like, they've bought into this nihilism. So it's not surprising that they also fall lockstep in with the misanthropy of the green movement and the idea that we are somehow an inconvenience on Mother Gaia. And the sooner we get off world and go to the moon, the better, because we're bad for the earth. And I think that's not the truth. I think that's discombobulating us, because I think we are the center of the universe. Whatever you think about the Copernican revolution, ball, flat, infinite plane, cosmogony, it doesn't matter. My main point is, whatever it is, I think we are the center. I think the universe doesn't happen without us. I mean, sure, we may be upgraded apes. Evolution may have happened as described, but I'm saying this nexus point where our soul intersects or converges with the body on this timeline in this material realm, this is what creates the universe. The backstory and all that is almost irrelevant. And when it comes to history, history is a collection of fake news going back a lot further than what we're looking at. I mean, was history ever purely objective, or has it always been lies agreed upon, as Napoleon Bonaparte said? Jim Moran says, think of the decision you made to leave your last relationship. That was a turning point. Yeah, I don't even know how much of a big deal it was. Like, I'm so completely over it. But I know what you mean. A significant life decisions do represent, when you exercise agency, you can test it when you break with patterns or you leave cycles. And for a lot of people, these cycles are comforting, and it's scary to leave. And so a lot of people get stuck in ruts. And I think that's what this whole system is designed to do, to make it so you don't have to exercise agency very often. I alluded to Free Guy about the NPCs in Free City. And what liberates Free Guy, that causes him to wake up, is he starts making decisions. And at first they're laughable because they're very minor. So he's got a closet full of suits. They all look the exact same. But instead of taking the next one, he skips down and grabs like the third one. So it seems like nothing. But it was showing that he had never exercised agency before. And with every choice, every decision, he was slowly altering his life from the program, becoming free. And I think the program, as I describe it, is our fabricated history that we live through. The thing that maintains this triangulated mind war system. And to the extent that you believe it and you live within it and you react to it like it's real, you are programmed. The news cycle keeps you locked in the program. And that's why I'm making it a point here to expand our frame of reference from the present current thing, news cycle, whatever the spotlighting, to this period of time, 63 to 2026. So if you start looking at this in terms of decades, it's like in Westworld. Until you break the cycle, you can't see that you're locked in a false paradigm. So what I'm trying to really emphasize here is that when you look at this in a timeline, you can actually see the program for what it is. And then you can exit the program. You can become deprogrammed. And until you can identify the program, you can't claim to be deprogrammed. You can't claim to be off the grid. I don't care if you have a bunker in the middle of nowhere. You're still on the grid if you haven't stepped outside of their internalized Truman Show. Lean Dion says there's hidden land at the edge of the map. Yeah, what breaks the system in Free Guy is he finds there's more land outside of their map. And when they have to calculate for the more land, it breaks the model and the people go free. I mean, think about it. If they found Atlantis, let's say the space program has been misrepresenting the Earth to hide a continent, and somebody finds it, and there's like, oh, there's another continent here. Well, that kind of throws a lot of their models out the window. We have to rethink things. It would have significant implications for their calculations about climate change. Maybe there's volcanoes on this other landmass that's causing most of the CO2. I mean, the idea of more land or significant discrepancy created a paradigm shock, and everyone broke out of this system. Sprightly says, man, I wish I had a loudspeaker cruising by folks with this. You know, I originally said when the off-world stage invades, we're only hitting Trutherville because the woke left are unreachable and the mainstreamers are asleep. And I said, let's just aim at those who are at least trying to wake up. But I've revised that opinion because now I can see that truthers are not interested in exiting their belief system. In fact, they're more entrenched than the mainstreamers. So when I start promoting this book, and the reason why I'm emphasizing infographics and whiteboards is my new target demographic isn't truthers. I'm aiming for Normville. So yes, I am aiming for Normville. I approve you loudspeaker blasting this in your hoods. And what I think will make this work as a strategy is I'll say, well, I'm not advocating crazy conspiracy theories like those crazy people over there gathered around Candace Owens and Alex Jones. So by creating that distance, by saying we're not with them, I can get the Normville people on my side. I mean, that would be nice if people could go straight from Normville to off-world stage without having to walk through the freak show, without having to wade through the nightmare. So you exit the dream, you wake up, instead of dream world to nightmare. And very few of them get out of the nightmare. I mean, I was there for a while. I remember existing in the world where I believe that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were shape-shifting reptilians who hung out with the Queen of England, and they sacrificed children and harvested their adrenochrome and did these sacrifices on the ley lines to lower our vibe so the archonic reptilians could keep us under control and prevent us from escaping this realm. Like, I remember believing all the craziest conspiracy theories. Like aliens were fallen angels. Like, yeah, that's not a new idea to me. That Satan's going to come back with his army of fallen angels, but they'll be aliens and everyone will embrace them. Like, I remember falling for even climate change. I assumed that the planes were poisoning us. I didn't even dispute that premise. I believed fluoride in the water. In fact, I stopped drinking tap water and started drinking, filtered water, bottled water because of the paranoia I picked up from Alex Jonestown. Like, if you drink the water, you'll be pacified and you won't resist. And it's like, really? So it's like sort of a depressant or something. Like, if I'm really trying to get some sleep or I'm trying to chill out, I should drink water. Duet Celeste says, the truthers feel vindicated because of the whole Epstein saga. I've been looking at the Epstein thing again. Has Epsteinology turned anything up? Anything we haven't heard already? No. It's just created here's my honest opinion now on the Epstein thing, having looked at it. I talked about the triangulation built into the world stage. That's the architecture. It cannot change. They need that. So they needed ICE to antagonize the woke left, to reinforce their belief that their oppressor is whiteness. They needed Epstein for the right, the far right, to maintain their belief that Israel controls the world through compromising everybody. So these two sides of the political horseshoe are each centered around their own scapegoat oppressor-oppressed narrative, with them being the oppressed, and then the masses being asleep. So they're woke. So wokeism, left and right, it's more of a conversion, like being reborn or a born again. The wokeism is like a religious transformation in somebody, where now they see the world in this different way, and they have to evangelize. They have to fight for what they see as right. They have to fight against the devil in their view. But these are mutually exclusive conspiracy theory-based worldviews, far left and far right, that maintain the antagonism, because these are the extremes. And then you have moderates, and then people who are just in the gray area. But to maintain this antagonism, they have to revamp their myths. They have to recycle these things. They have to maintain the illusions. So the Epstein saga, I would say, is a long-term psychological operation to maintain the system. And I'd say the same thing about the cop killings like George Floyd or Trayvon Martin. These things that cause the left to march reinforce their paradigm, reinforce the programming, keep them on the world stage. I don't believe that the Epstein thing, I don't even know if any of it's real. I don't think they're eating babies. I don't think they're worshiping Satan or doing mind control experiments. I believe any of it. And there's a lot of manufactured fake evidence. Additionally, they're also looking at FBI anonymous tips. So you have a bunch of operatives shit posting tips to the FBI, making up a bunch of nonsense, and the FBI says there's nothing to this. So the conspiracy theorists get this dump of all these anonymous tips the FBI doesn't act on. And instead of saying, well, these are baseless tips, this is some kind of propaganda campaign, instead they say, oh, the FBI is covering this stuff up and it's all real. So truthers are very much auto believers when it comes to the content that's delivered to their side of the fence. And we confronted this already with the whole Q movement and their whole save the children thing, and none of them saved any children. And I said then, it's also idealistic and foolish to imagine that the evil in the world's concentrated in a small group, that you could just excise this group and have world peace and get rid of all the evil. No, I'm sorry, evil is equally distributed. It's in your neighborhood. It's not only on these distant islands. Commenter says, wasn't Epstein involved in creating Bitcoin? He seems to have been busy. Yeah, he's probably the creator of Bitcoin. So commenter Whisk Doladino says, did he just say he doesn't think the elite eat babies? Like, it's an absurd proposition for me to say they don't eat babies, because you just assume that they do. No, I don't think the elite eat babies. I think that's mythology that you were given because you fall on the right side of the political horseshoe and you're a target demographic in the mind war, and they know what kind of ideas will appeal to you. Yeah, I think that, look, you could make the case that Epstein started 4chan's politically incorrect, the conduit for Groyperism, woke rightism, the conduit for Q. It all came through some kind of collab between the 4chan cesspool and Jeffrey Epstein personally. Sprightly says, thoughts on Iran? Midterms. We're going to see a lot of psyops leading up to the midterms. So this is an opportunity for the right to flex and then say, look, you guys are getting what you voted for, and we need to ramp up ICE because these terrorists coming in fighting for Allah are all immigrants. I also think it reveals quite a lot about the state of media consumers today and how abysmal it is, where you have Major General Flynn reacting to flight simulator footage like it's real, sharing it, and telling us to pray for the pilots. It's like, yeah, let me pray for that video game character. Commenter says, what's up with the CEO burger videos? I'm not familiar. Now, Pizzagate is a satanic panic. And satanic panics, you notice they only afflict the right wing. How come the lefties don't fall for satanic panics? How come they're not falling for moral panics? Why is that a right wing thing? It's the political horseshoe. It's traditional versus progressive. And they use the pandemic and the moral panics as parallel psyops, targeting left and right. So they target you with the psychological operations that are specific to your world view. That's why it's so intriguing to me as an alien anthropologist to see how they've introduced superstitions to people who think that they're adopting scientific beliefs. So aliens and demons are fair game. And I see alien believers like, hey, stop calling them demons. You're making us look unhinged. And it's because the alien people think that they have the approval of science for their beliefs. So they think they're somehow above being superstitious and gullible. It's like, no, you're superstitious and gullible. You're a nasatologist. All right. So I brought up that again, Frank Herbert, Dune Messiah. They're not mad. They're trained to believe, not to know. Belief can be manipulated. Knowledge is dangerous. Jordan Crowder says, randomly, Trump orders the release of all UFO files, and the phrase aliens or demons is trending by right-wing influencers. See, other people are noticing this. Jamarian says, Tim, the commenter's referring to the McDonald's CEO trying to eat their new Arch Burger released on 3/3. He could barely take a bite. Are you suggesting there was a baby in it? There are people who say that the breakfast burritos at McDonald's are baby meat. And I have a problem with those people. Because if you're convinced that they're serving babies for breakfast at McDonald's and you're not out there protesting, what kind of person are you? You're complicit. Like, you should be stopping it. I guess I'm more of an activist than a lot of these people. If I believed any of these conspiracy theories, I'd be boots on the ground. I'd be carrying signs. I'd be at City Hall. It's too bad I'm not a conspiracy theorist, because I would champion these causes like I really meant it. Meanwhile, none of them do. Like, why are conspiracy theorists just griping online and never actually doing anything? And I realize that's why. The internet is a steam valve. You're in a mind war. You don't need to have physical, real world actions to correlate with the mind war. It's all done in the mind. So you can have this catharsis by scrolling and tweeting, opining on the internet, debating. And once you've done that, you feel like you've done enough. You've done your part. You've served your faction in the mind war. And there's no more incentive to continue. Again, this is the sublimated civil war that Walter Lippmann wrote about 100 years ago. Like, we're in it. It's not new. We were in mind war way before Michael Aquinas wrote the book about it. I have a theory as to why they had him write it. Separate topic. People are deep diving into Erica Kirk. Apparently, she lied about her academic record. See, this is fascinating. Led by Candace Owens, there's this mass deconstruction of Erica Kirk. So all these online sleuths are exposing how she's totally fake. She's a construct. But what they're missing is this. This all applies to Charlie Kirk as well. But they think they're finding authentic information when they're not. They're finding the manufactured version of the villain Erica Kirk you're supposed to find, while not noticing that Charlie Kirk is just as fake. So the backstory they're uncovering is a fake backstory. The real backstory is that she and Kirk are operatives for the PSYOP entertainment complex, actors playing roles. They didn't actually have kids. So it's all theater. This Erica Kirk derangement syndrome is the result of theater. Anything people are finding about it, they were meant to find. Brian Dunning says, yes, Trump really did get shot in the ear. It's not staged. He has a blog post about it. I haven't read his blog post. I think it's funny that somebody even take this stance. So I'm looking at people's comments. 23rd says, it bypasses most of the conspiracy theory red flags. What's the motive? You could pull it off with 3 people, Trump, an intermediary, and the shooter. See, this is where, again, it's all about perspective. If you don't have the off-world stage perspective, you cannot decode many of these events. In order to decode the Butler, Pennsylvania event, to understand what's going on, you have to take account of who would necessarily have to know. And that's going to include Secret Service, the people behind Trump, the propagandists taking the photos. Like, it's too big of a group of people. It wasn't like Trump faked it or Charlie Kirk faked it. No, we're talking about staged, manufactured, historic events. So it's not like we're watching an event interpreted by the media because we saw it through their cameras. No, the media constructed the event. It's actually too big of a conspiracy for people to see it. Jeffrey says, fastest ear healing on record. Meanwhile, the cut on my ear from the age 15 is still there. Never Daunted says, claiming it's staged still pisses off the conservatives. Some people are just trolling with it. But again, the reason why people aren't able to figure out the extent of it is they don't have the right frame of reference. And that's why I'm making this video, Charlie Kirk's Alive, Squibs, and the Art of Psywar, is to put it in a context in which it makes sense. And if you're a MAGA, you're not going to like it. This is why the people that people are mentioning to me, hey, look, these channels are talking about Charlie Kirk's thing being fake. They can't go that far because they're MAGA. And the whole premise of MAGA is destroyed when you recognize that Donald Trump participated in a psychological operation, not as a bystander, not insulated and unaware. No, he's the center stage, putting ketchup on the side of his head. He knew what he was doing. And it's not just about winning an election, like, oh, he staged the thing to win the election. It's deeper than that, because we're talking about an event that was scripted to occur many years prior. And we can prove this. This wasn't just something they came up with at a strategy meeting to win the election. No, this thing would necessarily been planned at least 15, 20 years in advance. On that particular event, based on my mind mapping, I'm confident in saying 15, but it's probably much longer, much further back. So Brian Dunning says, a segment on the left had believed the incident was fake to make Trump appear to be a tough guy, to get sympathy, to incite hatred towards Antifa. He says it was not staged. Here's how we know. The fact that this was a real attempt and nobody allowed it to happen. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to get a free trial. See, we're not saying it was allowed to happen. I'm saying that there weren't any real bullets fired. And this is how they trick people. The fireman dying, the shooter getting killed. When you add blood to a scene, it makes it real for people. And they don't kill people at psyops. It's all theatrical blood. The bloody guardrail is one of the major obstacles to people seeing through this thing entirely. As long as you're stuck on the carnage, the atrocity propaganda, as long as you think people are dying, you can't see through it. So I can't really read this guy's post right now, but I'm saying he doesn't have a clue. If you think Trump was really shot, you have no clue. Like, it's almost embarrassing that you decide to share that on the internet. Eddie Griffin, comedian, says it's not Jim Carrey, it's a clone. You know, they did the same thing to another comedian during the first wave of the Q stuff, Dave Chappelle. There's a lot of people who think Dave Chappelle was swapped out because he was speaking out against the system. Same thing with Jim Carrey. Not sure what it is. Are people just not aware of aging? Time? I don't know. Okay, let's continue scrolling down my Twitter feed. Body cam footage has been released from the Austin police running to danger to take down the Islamic terrorist. God bless these American heroes, says Nick Sortor. Does God bless crisis actors? I don't know. I guess so. And also, God bless those CGI pilots in that flight simulator. Duet says, the fight scene is based on the painting Liberty Leading the People by Lejean Let me take a look at that one. Okay. So there's a 1830 painting, Liberty Leading the People. Commenters have noticed compositional similarities. Central figure, arm raised, chaotic scene. Okay, this is interesting because I can see it. I can see the similarity. Trump assassination, an iconic image is born. So they're comparing it to this painting from 1830. It's also been compared to the Marines raising the flag. It's also been compared to Braveheart. I think Braveheart's the closest match, especially when you correlate it with Trump's Truth Social avatar. But you also have the fall of Iwo Jima. So there's a few, but what it suggests is this. I would say it's a hoax indicator when you have famous imagery encoded into an event like this, iconic postures. It's too perfect. My favorite shot is the bullet whizzing by his ear. The photographer's like, oh, I see a bullet. Let me get my camera out, snap a photo of it as it passes by his ear. Same photographer who photographed George W. Bush when they were whispering into his ear that 9/11 was happening. And the guy who photographed that Braveheart photo is the one who photographed George W. Bush dodging the shoes. Anyway, there's a number of articles on that particular painting, so I'm going to bookmark it. This is a website called photographerslightrocket.com. I'll post a link in the chat if you want to dig into that. I'll be looking at that. See, what I'm pointing out here, what I think happens is when they choreograph the event, they're doing it for maximum impact. So they looked at these various images and iconic photos and sculptures they wanted to inculcate into the PSYOP. So they took a little bit of that painting, they got some Braveheart, they probably have some other elements in there that we haven't even found yet, but they introduced these things into the scene to add meaning. And this is just very highly effective propaganda. And again, the fact that it's so perfect to me is just another hoax indicator. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth talking in 2018 about the miracle of reconstructing the Third Temple of Solomon, the place where the Antichrist will be worshipped, according to Orthodox Christians. Emma says, The Jim Carrey situation is scary to me because why do so many people automatically resort to insane, irrational conspiracies and they really believe it? What's going on? Yeah, you have this like willingness to just automatically believe the official story on the main side. But on the alternative side, you have this willingness to disbelieve. And that disbelief leaves a vacuum. And it's like anything but what the mainstream believes gets a pass. Like Candace Owens is now what, 6 months or seven? How many months has she just been reiterating, remaking, twisting around the original conspiracy theory, and she's still not done? Sense Receptor says, remember how they primed everyone into believing in super scary viruses with movies like Outbreak? Then the real thing came along. Now they're priming us for nukes. For your information, when they nuke someplace and you see it on TV. Okay, that's pretty good. This guy's showing an image of Fallout. Again, Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, two metascripters on the world stage who are, both of them are heavily invested in this whole nuke scenario. Oppenheimer, for example. Okay, let's see what else we have. I'm seeing some crazy comments. My favorite thing that's happened so far this month, though, has been Hillary Clinton, when asked about frazzle drip, puts her hands on her face in a very bizarre way, like she's putting a mask on, and people are calling it muscle memory. You know, it's hard to say when something like that is intentional, or if there's just so many people watching it and their cognitive bias is going to find the slightest thing to spin a story out of. One thing you can say is that conspiritainment is a thing and that it is very much storytelling. And I think there's some innate need to engage in these story swapping. You know, we're swapping tales, campfire stories, and instead of a campfire, everyone's got a glowing screen in front of their face. But it just seems like the need to communicate in this way and share stories and myths has been hijacked by the propaganda entertainment matrix, where we're witnessing collective confabulation and truth-ertainment and engagement bait for its own sake. All right, again, just catching up on my Twitter feed. If you want to follow me there, it's at real Tim Osman. You'll find most of the things that we're talking about. Trump commander tells troops to prepare for Jesus's return and issues a chilling Armageddon prophecy. A non-commissioned officer wrote to MRFF Monday that his combat unit commander claimed that Trump was anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to Earth. He urged us to tell our troops that this is all part of God's divine plan. He specifically referenced numerous citations out of Revelation referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus, according to this NCO. So some NCO is blowing the whistle that his commanders are putting this thing in a religious context. Good to know. Jamarian says there's a well-known YouTube channel called New York Prepper. When the Iran event started, he was like, wow, this is just like Call of Duty. Now, isn't Call of Duty connected to Tom Clancy? because Tom Clancy's a major metascripter. Tom Clancy's Op Center Call of Duty is a thriller novel. Focuses on a race to stop a war between the US and China. Okay, modern warfare. I see. And modern warfare is mind war. And a lot of it is, a lot of the propaganda is disseminated through video games and other forms of entertainment. But Tom Clancy was also the subject of that Jack Ryan similarity between Trump going after the president of Venezuela. Of course, 9/11 was a Tom Clancy production. And he does have some blackout stuff, some kind of digital virus, something. There's quite a lot of Civil War stuff as well. So I'm putting that in my notes. So the breakdown of metascriptors. So I would define a metascriptor as any director, writer, or other content creator whose work is used to reinforce a psyop in the form of concurrent programming or predictive programming. And we're finding that, and this is coming through our mapping of the movies and the actors and the correlated psyops, we're finding that the same directors are contributing to multiple psyops. So that kind of eliminates the idea that these are just random coincidences. No, you can pretty much tell who the quote metascriptors are on the world stage. It's not just Stanley Kubrick. And these aren't coincidences. I still find it a little, I don't know, maybe not sad, but maybe it's just human nature. People don't like change, but I think it's strange. There's still some people, as of like even last year, who were suggesting that we're just looking at coincidences. I mean, that's, at this point, it's reality denialism. Jamarian says, wasn't Cameron's first entry into the world stage the original Terminator film? Not really sure, but Cameron's been a big metascripter. He's been involved, of course, with the whole AI thing. Climate change is big. The Avatar films connect to this. And he's also got the social justice uprising against the capitalist system, the riots. So I think you can connect James Cameron with the LA riots and the Cop City riots. And of course, he's correlated with 9/11. His work is featured like Titanic, 9/11 predictive programming. I mean, he's got a very interesting connection to 9/11 through his movies and through his documentary Ghosts in the Abyss, and just the symbolism of him being at the wreckage of the Titanic on 9/11. It goes really deep with James Cameron. So we talk about James Cameron, John Carpenter. These are like the anointed directors. And Tom Clancy, these authors. And then along with these authors, writers, directors, you do find certain actors have repeated roles where they're contributing to future psyops. And this is where you can see the intelligent design here, the planning, the non-coincidental nature of these engineered coincidences. You can see like the same actors being conscripted to play similar analogous roles across multiple movies. I mean, one of the big giveaways is Giancarlo Esposito, who plays the mayor in Megalopolis, who orchestrates the assassination attempt on Caesar Catalina, a Trump character. Well, he's also Edgar in HBO's The Boys, the antagonist of the Homelander, who's the Trump character, who also has an assassination themed episode they had to censor around the time of Trump shooting. And then he's also Sidewinder, the antagonist to the president, played by Harrison Ford, who turns to the Red Hulk. And again, Harrison Ford, the Red Hulk. That whole movie had a trailer where the president's getting shot at while he's at his podium. And that trailer aired a day before Butler. So same actor, 3 roles where he's the opposition to Trump and tries to orchestrate the Trump character's assassination. So there's a level of consistency, planning, and I would say engineered coincidences that you can look at here, but you cannot call this stuff random. Not anymore. And the Great Deconstruction project is really just beginning. I'm expanding it now. I'm going to go into authors and directors. And as this thing fleshes out, you're going to see there's no other explanation. Like, we do have the correct answer. I've known this for some time, but it's time that we, using the available tools, leveraging AI, it's time that we present this in a series of, I guess, PDFs, most likely, and videos, but the content will be presented in these documents, which I think make the case with receipts pretty effectively. And I've been really trying to figure out, why has there been this opposition to connecting entertainment to psyops? Why have so many people been so vocal about saying it's merely a coincidence? Don't look behind the curtain. Why are people protecting this? And I think I know why. Because unlike the Illuminati or the Rothschilds, we're looking at a real conspiracy, and we can name names. And if you can name a name, then you can also rule in other people who would necessarily also have to be involved. And the circle grows. So the Charlie Kirk event, if you ask even AI, if this was a simulated event using theatrical blood, who would necessarily have to have been in the know to have pulled this off? It'll provide you a pretty good breakdown of who would reasonably be presumed to be involved. Like the people who carried his body to the SUV, Eric Kirk, J.D. Vance, and down the line. And people lose their plausible deniability. The circle expands, and you can see, okay, this is bigger than Charlie Kirk and some special effect. This is a manufactured historic event with decades of the planning that tells us a lot about the system that we're in. The news media is not what people think. It's not there to inform you. It's there to conform you to their prefabricated model. But we've got tons of evidence. We're systematizing it, and it's ammunition. So we're getting ready to put it to use. All right, let's see what else we have. I'm going through my Twitter feed. Yeah, that Austin event, totally fake. I don't think there's a hoax indicator that it's missing. It's 100% staged. It's as stagey as they come. I'll do a deeper dive on it, but the more I look at it, even the first person shooter it's 100% fakeable, beyond a doubt. The simunition, blanks, everything that you see on video can be simulated. It's a no-brainer. All right, we'll continue this tomorrow. I'm going to work on the phone system. I apologize to those who try to call in. Thanks to those who did. I don't know what the deal is, but we're moving into a new system, a 1-800 number, and that's where we get back-to-back calls. It's far more productive, and the caller queue allows you to sit there and listen. So if someone else is on the phone, you don't have to have perfect timing. So thanks for your comments. Appreciate the channel support. I'll be sending a newsletter update with archives. I'm trying to catch up. I missed a couple weeks of archives, but I'm catching up. So if you're subscribed to the newsletter, you'll get those. And you'll note that you get the video and you get a synopsis of the transcript, which I'm using Notebook for. And along with the synopsis, 5 quotes, just to make sure that the statements that we make, the lexicon that we use, our ideas are published. Because there's so many content thieves and harvesters and co-opters out there. And then also I'm using the new beta tested feature, which is the infographic. So I'm having infographics created out of the transcripts. So if you look at the thumbnails, you'll see these infographics are all being generated specifically out of what we talk about. So when we start getting calls, I will prompt the AI, list the callers by name or username and provide quotes. Give me a synopsis of the calls. So it's going to be it's a very useful tool, but if you're subscribed to the newsletter, you'll see what I mean. It's an improvement over what I could have done before, providing a synopsis and the ability to get these quotes like that. It's extremely valuable. It would have costed a lot of money to hire professionals to do what we're doing right now. And that's what all the big channels used to do. They would hire people to do what I've essentially automated here. I've also been running some bots, some tests, some AI agents on X with Replit, and I'll keep you appraised of those and the progress that we make in that area. I have an auto-hoax bot monitoring certain threads on X, and it's going to respond according to the knowledge base that I give it. And once I get one working, then I'll set off several more. And the idea is to scale up. And I want to scale up so that we have an effective marketing team 24/7, bringing people into the think tank, but in a very targeted way. People who have crossed certain lines, asked certain questions, are subscribed to certain channels. We can get very nuanced about it, which we may as well. You know how we are very much targeted by specific and nuanced propaganda. That's why I say you got to take a non-position, because if you're in an anti-position, you're a target. You don't want to be a target demographic in a mind war. You don't want to be a recipient of targeted propaganda. It's better to stay out of the line of fire, especially if you think about the cumulative effect of repeated inundation with certain ideas. Mind viruses, I hate to admit it, but they're kind of real. President Donald Trump says he's going to build a 100,000 seat stadium near the White House to host a UFC fight on his birthday. Empty Bliss says, you got to watch this. We Are Livestock. It's all a lie. 6 Layers of Control by Chase Hughes. Yeah, there's a lot of great content creators who do talk about psyops and mind war, but I just want to reiterate, they're not going to arrive at the world stage and history bending and manufactured history and the psyop entertainment complex. They will not arrive at the full picture. They will not see the forest for the trees. And the reason why it's perspective. You have to break out of the duopoly's limited perspectives that you're allowed to take. And I don't think any big channel, even if their information is good, it's incomplete. And the bigger the channel, the less likely they're going to go outside of these certain bounds. That's why we left. We left because we don't want the success of this enterprise to be dependent on meeting the expectations or pandering to the brainwashed with their belief systems. We're coming at this from the outside. All right, have a great evening. We'll see you all tomorrow, and I'll get the phones fixed by then.